Hi everyone, welcome to ZAMANCAST, the podcast where we explore the world of learning languages. I am your host Zaman, and today we are talking about how we learn languages according to research. We'll also dive into the big mistakes people make when it comes to learning grammar and vocabulary, and I'll share some advice for language learners. Let's start our podcast by giving a clear answer to a question I'm always asked. How can I learn a foreign language? The answer is very simple. You will learn it the same way you learn your native language, which is by understanding messages. Let me break that down a little. There are two ways that our brain stores language. The first way is what we call learning. Learning is a conscious knowledge of language. It is the knowledge of rules. With this way, we learn how to analyze language more than how to use it, how to speak, how to express. The second way, which we will analyze today, is acquisition. Learning is conscious. Acquisition is unconscious. It's the knowledge that you have in your brain even if you don't know it's there. Think about your native language. Are you aware of why you made a sentence the way you did? The answer is no. Or think about children. They don't know grammar rules like the present perfect, present simple, but they make sentences with the correct structure unconsciously. If you ask them why they structured their sentences like this, they will say, I don't know. Because they don't analyze language, they communicate. Yes, you should learn math, science and so on, but language isn't a scientific subject, so you should acquire it. Now you might be asking, how can I acquire language? As I said before, acquisition comes from understanding messages. Our brain acquires language when it can understand what is being communicated to it. So, if you are learning English, you have to find material where the language is presented to you in such a way that it is at least 90% comprehensible and understandable. That means comprehensible input. Let's talk about how you can use the information I have given in this podcast. You should find reading or listening material that you understand 90 or 95% of the material. And read and listen to it as much as possible. Don't focus on grammar or vocabulary. Just focus on the message, meaning just try to understand what is being said. And that's enough. And this way, you will also learn new words unconsciously. If you understand 95%, you can easily guess the remaining 5 or 10%. That's why I said you should find material where you already understand 90 or 95% of it. If the material is only 70 or 80% understandable, it will be much more difficult to guess the remaining percent. By engaging with material where you understand 95% of what's being said, through listening and reading, you will naturally pick up the remaining 5% through context. Your brain handles this process effortlessly. However, if you encounter something you don't understand from context, don't worry. You don't need to learn every new word the first time you encounter it. If a word is unclear in one text, don't worry, just keep listening. You'll come across it again and again in different contexts, multiple times. Eventually, your brain will grasp it effortlessly, much like how children learn language. But don't forget, this method only works when you use the material that you understand at least 90% of it. Otherwise, you can't guess and learn the remaining 10%. And when it comes to grammar, let me tell you something. The undisputed best way to learn grammar is this. How? If you try to learn grammar in a rule-by-rule manner, as I mentioned earlier, you'll end up learning to analyze the language rather than use it naturally. When we speak, we don't consciously think about which tense to use. If you want to learn grammar effectively, the best approach is to learn it naturally from context. And the best way to do that is through listening and reading. To summarize what you need to do, find listening or reading material where you understand 90 or 95% of the content and consume it daily. But I also want to emphasize that make sure it is something enjoyable. If you find joy in what you are listening to or reading, it will be much more beneficial. Graded readers are very useful for this purpose. Additionally, on YouTube, you can search for content by your language level. For example, if you are a beginner, you can search for A1 level stories and find plenty of audio stories. You have the advantage of the internet, so use it to your benefit. Now, I can almost hear you asking, but what if I know nothing at all? What should I do? Don't worry, I'll cover everything. We'll go over how to progress from absolute beginner to advanced levels. The best methods and principles for language learning, all backed by the latest scientific research. Just stay tuned. And with that, we have come to the end of today's podcast. I hope it was helpful for you. Thank you for listening. Until next time, take care and goodbye.